Alassane Ouattara, the real problem. His fictitious arguments and the lies of a suicidal candidacy for the West African sub-region. Dear followers, Alassane Ouattara, in desperate search of a fourth term, justifies his unconstitutional project with two fallacious arguments which, far from proving his competence, reveal his role as gravedigger of regional stability. These arguments are not only misleading, but also dangerous, because they aim to grant the Ivorian despot a blank check to complete his work of demolition of the West African sub-region. Let's go back to his lies and their implications. The old guy claims that the break with the West African Economic and Monetary Union, WEMU, and the CFA franc is inevitable, especially after the departure of Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger from ECOWAS. According to him, these countries would be moving towards a total exit from regional organizations, which would cause an economic tsunami. To avoid this catastrophe, he claims to be the only head of state capable of managing such a situation thanks to his expertise as an economist. But this rhetoric is an insult to collective intelligence. Alassane Ouattara is precisely the cause of this implosion. It was its lack of wisdom and impulsiveness that led ECOWAS to impose illegal, illegitimate and inhumane sanctions against the military regimes of Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger. These sanctions, pushed by him, fueled the rejection of regional institutions, perceived as instruments of foreign domination. How can it present itself today as the solution, when it is the very source of the problem? By himself violating his country's constitution to grant himself a third term, the dictator of the lagoons discredited himself as a defender of institutional stability. His authoritarian rule has undermined the legitimacy of regional structures and reinforced divisions. Keeping him in power would therefore amount to giving him the green light to complete the demolition of the WEMU and the CFA zone. The departure of Alassane Ouattara, on the contrary, is the sine qua non condition for restoring dialogue with marginalized countries and avoiding a total collapse of regional economic institutions. The same Ouattara also puts forward the idea that Côte d'Ivoire, under his reign, is the last oasis of stability in a sub-region prey to chaos. He claims that, without him, Côte d'Ivoire would sink into a security crisis which would lead to the collapse of ECOWAS. But this statement is as misleading as it is dangerous. The reality is that the superliar octogenarian is the main architect of regional insecurity. Under his regime, Côte d'Ivoire became a breeding ground for plots and interference in the affairs of neighboring states. Mali, Burkina Faso, Ghana and other countries have repeatedly denounced attempts at destabilization coming from Côte d'Ivoire, orchestrated by Alassane Ouattara to impose presidents he controls. Its aggressive foreign policy, combined with its repressive and authoritarian governance, directly fuels political tensions and conflicts in the West African sub-region. It is not a shield against insecurity, it is its engine. It is therefore imperative to understand that keeping Alassane Ouattara in power would be an act of collective sabotage for the sub-region. It is because of him that ECOWAS imploded, his stubbornness in sanctioning the people of Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger isolated these countries. It is because of him that the WEMU and the CFA franc are in danger, his authoritarian governance and his insatiable quest for power have undermined confidence in these institutions. I wanted to tell you something. I have heard a lot of statements about the CFA franc. I want to make this important statement. You see, I don't want to show any lack of humility. But I was Director of Studies for the Central Bank of West African Stat ES, BCAO, which issues the CFA franc. I was Vice Governor, I was Governor of the BCAO, I was Deputy Director General of the International Monetary Fund, so I believe that this debate must stop. People talk about it, without knowing what they are talking about. The CFA franc is our currency. It is the currency of the countries which have freely consented to it and which have implemented it in a sovereign manner, since independence, since 1960. The CFA franc is older than the euro. Nobody talks about the euro and this does not seem to pose a problem. So, I don't understand this false debate on the CFA franc. I wanted to clarify that. The CFA franc is a solid currency. It is a currency which is managed by the Central Bank of West African States, of which I was the governor, of which I am today honorary governor. A currency managed only by Africans. It is a currency that is in circulation not only in 8 West African member states, but also throughout West Africa. If you go to Mauritania, if you go to Ghana, Nigeria, Liberia, Sierra Leone, in other countries, in Gambia, in all these countries, the populations accept and use the CFA franc. If this currency was so criticized, why do you want countries that are not members of the CFA franc and their populations to go looking for CFA francs? But, on the other hand, in the CFA zone of West Africa, we do not have currencies from neighboring countries, because this currency is solid, it is appreciated, it is well managed. The 8 economies that make it up are among the best in economic performance. The growth rate is above 6%. Inflation is low. Poverty is reducing. The deficits are reduced because we are together, and solidarity means that from time to time, we can provide each other with support, which moves the machine forward. It is a currency that is solid. It is a currency, of course, for which we will make reforms in due course. But that's our business. I really wish these false debates could stop. Our currency is the CFA franc, and we are very, very happy to have this currency, which is stabilizing for our economies, for our countries and for our populations. Thank you. It is because of him that the WEMU and the CFA franc are in danger. His authoritarian governance and his insatiable quest for power have undermined confidence in these institutions. Are we really going to grant him a 4th illegal and illegitimate mandate so that he can complete his demolition work? France, in particular, must avoid falling into this trap. Supporting Alassane Ouattara would be a fatal strategic error that would precipitate the collapse of regional institutions, to the detriment of its own interests in West Africa. Conclusion: a clear choice for the future. Keeping the tyrant Ouattara in power means offering a gravedigger in the sub-region the opportunity to complete his work of destruction. Côte d'Ivoire, like West Africa, cannot afford to let this man continue his reign, marked by division, arrogance and failure. Peace, stability and cooperation will only return with his departure. This is where the real hope for renewal for the sub-region lies, where institutions will finally be rethought and adapted to the aspirations of the African people. Choosing to support Alassane Ouattara is to condemn West Africa to fracture and instability. Choosing to turn the Ouattara page means offering a chance for reconciliation, reconstruction and a better future. Chris Yapi does not lie. Find Chris Yapi on his 2 YouTube channels, his Rumble channel, his TikTok, X, Instagram, VK and Threads accounts.